At 0330, October 5th, 1944, under a moonless sky thick with autumn mist, 5 paratroopers of Easy Company, 2nd Battalion, 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment, 101st Airborne Division moved silently through the flooded fields of Gelderland, Holland. Their mission was routine, yet vital. Occupy an observation post near the southern dike, close to the village of Randwick, a low earthen embankment that marked the boundary of a precarious 5-kilometer stretch of land Allied troops had grimly nicknamed the Island. Bordered by the Wall River to the south and the Lower Rhine to the north, this narrow corridor was all that remained of Operation Market Garden's shattered promise. What began as a bold thrust into the heart of Nazi Germany had devolved into a static, attritional slog more reminiscent of the Western Front in 1916 than the mobile warfare of 1944. Private Joe Lesniewski, a 22-year-old from Chicago and veteran of Normandy and Eindhoven, at the crest he froze. To his east, barely 50 meters away, a German MG-42 machine gun was mounted on a tripod, its barrel pointed down the road. Beside it, a German infantryman wearing the field-gray tunic of the Wehrmacht, not the black of the SS, was pulling the spoon from a steel hand grenade, the infamous potato masher grenade. Lesniewski shouted a warning. The grenade arced through the air and detonated in the shallow ditch where his comrades crouched. 4 of the 5 men were wounded, shrapnel tearing through limbs, faces, and gear. Only Lesniewski, shielded by the dike's crest, remained unharmed. What the patrol did not know, and could not have known, was that they had stumbled into the forward screen of 2 full companies of the 16th SS Panzergrenadier Division, Reichsfuhrer SS, elite troops recently transferred from Italy. These were not rear echelon garrison soldiers. Combat, their presence signaled a major German buildup, and their mission was not reconnaissance, it was the opening move of a coordinated assault. Unbeknownst to Easy Company, while this diversionary probe unfolded, the 363rd Volksgrenadier Division, a reconstituted Wehrmacht formation built around experienced NCOs and conscripted teenagers, was massing just north of the Lower Rhine, preparing to launch a massive dawn attack against the 506th Regimental headquarters in Ofisten. The German objective was clear and strategically sound. Eliminate the Allied foothold on the island, sever the last tenuous link between the British Second Army and the trapped remnants of the 1st Airborne at Arnhem, and restore control of the Rhine's southern bank. If successful, the entire Market Garden corridor would collapse. By early October 1944, the 101st Airborne, a grand vision of Market Garden, launched on September 17th, had evaporated in the smoke over Arnhem. The plan, conceived by Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery, was audacious. Drop 3 Allied airborne divisions along a single highway stretching 64 miles from Eindhoven to Arnhem, secure key bridges, and allow XXX Corps Armored Spearhead to race north and cross the Rhine into Germany before winter. Success hinged on speed, surprise, and the paratroopers holding ground far beyond their logistical reach. But the plan unraveled within 48 hours. At Arnhem, the British 1st Airborne encountered not the weak garrison expected, but 2 SS Panzer Corps, over 10,000 elite Panzer Grenadiers with tanks and artillery. Cut off and outnumbered, they fought heroically but could not hold the bridge. XXX Corps, delayed by narrow roads, blown bridges, and fierce resistance, never reached them. By September 25th, the survivors of Arnhem were evacuated across the Rhine in a desperate night operation. For the 101st, the aftermath was grim. Ordered to hold the southern portion of the corridor, Eindhoven to Veghel, They had succeeded against heavy odds. But with Arnhem lost, their position became a salient jutting into German-held territory. The island. Now, instead of advancing into Germany, they were defending a waterlogged, exposed strip of farmland under constant artillery fire. The fighting had regressed to trench warfare. German batteries, positioned on the north bank of the Lower Rhine, just 2,000 meters away, had the entire island meticulously zeroed in. Using pre-registered coordinates and forward observers hidden in church steeples, they could drop 105mm and 150mm shells with terrifying accuracy. Daylight movement was suicidal. Resupply, casualty evacuation, and even latrine duty had to be conducted at night. Paratroopers dug shallow foxholes into the sides of the dikes. Man-made levees, 10 to 15 outposts occupied opposite sides of the same dike, separated by only 30 or 40 yards. Night patrols became deadly games of cat and mouse, with both sides probing for weak points, laying mines, and ambushing each other in the fog. It was into this tense, claustrophobic environment that Easy Company's patrol ventured on October 5th. After the grenade blast, the survivors fell back under covering fire, dragging their wounded through mud and standing water. They reached the company command post, CP, in Randwick by 0415, bloodied and shaken. Captain Richard Winters, 30 years old, West Point educated, and the de facto leader of Easy Company since D-Day, listened intently. He knew this was not a random encounter. The precision of the ambush, the presence of a machine gun in a forward position, suggested a larger operation was imminent. Winters immediately organized a bayonets fixed, moving low and silent through the pre-dawn darkness. Winters, ever the tactician, crawled alone to the dike's crest for reconnaissance. Below, he saw a hard-packed farm road running parallel to the dike, ideal for troop movement. But more critically, he spotted the German machine gun, now reinforced with 7 riflemen in a shallow trench just beyond the road. Winters returned, assigned each man a specific target, and positioned his 2 bar gunners and a 60mm mortar team to suppress the MG-42. At his signal, they opened fire. In seconds, all 7 German riflemen were hit. The machine gun fell silent. But Winters knew this was only the tip of the spear. From his vantage point, he could see movement in the tree line beyond, shadows shifting, equipment glinting. The enemy was well concealed, possibly in battalion strength. Worse, his small force was exposed on open ground, vulnerable to flanking fire from either side of the dike. If the Germans pushed forward now, they would roll straight down the road into the 2nd Battalion CP in Randwick, and beyond that, the 506th Regimental HQ in Ofiesten. Reinforcements arrived, another 20 men from Easy and Fox. Winters made a decision that would define the night: fix bayonets and assault. It was a bold, almost anachronistic order in the age of automatic weapons. But it was tactically sound. A bayonet charge at night would shock and disorient an enemy expecting a defensive posture. It would close the distance before German machine guns could reorganize. And it would seize the initiative. In 3 columns, the Americans advanced. Machine guns laid down suppressing fire. At the road's edge, Winters rose first, pistol in hand. A German sentry turned. Winters shot him at point-blank range. Then he saw them, over 100 German soldiers, forming up in the field. A fire shattered the German formation. Men fell, others froze in confusion. The rest of the patrol reached the road and opened fire. Caught in the open, the Germans broke and ran straight into the path of a 2nd, previously undetected SS company moving up in support. The 2 German units collided in disarray. Winters seized the moment. He radioed for artillery support from the British 6th Airborne Division, whose 25-pounder batteries were positioned near Nijmegen. Within minutes, shells began crashing into the retreating Germans, cutting off their escape toward the lower Rhine. But the Germans were not finished. Regrouping quickly, they launched a counterattack against the Americans' right rear flank, a classic pincer movement. Simultaneously, they called in their own artillery. The first salvos landed with devastating accuracy. Winters, realizing his position was untenable, ordered an immediate withdrawal. As the paratroopers scrambled back over the dike, 18 men were wounded by shrapnel. Some struck multiple times, yet refusing evacuation until the line was secure. When the firing ceased at dawn, the scale of the engagement became clear. Winters and 34 men of Easy and Fox companies had engaged 2 SS companies, nearly 300 elite troops, and not only repelled them, but inflicted heavy casualties. German bodies littered the field. Abandoned weapons and equipment were scattered for hundreds of yards. At first light, the 363rd Volksgrenadier Division launched its main assault against Ulfiasden. But because Winters had shattered the SS spearhead hours earlier, the attack lacked its planned momentum. The regimental headquarters held. Had the SS companies reached the road unopposed, they would have struck the 506th HQ with 101st Airborne. In the heat of the action, Winters' decision to go on the offensive against a force nearly 10 times his size had been the right one. It was not bravado. It was cold, calculated risk based on terrain, timing, and enemy behavior. He understood that on the island, defense was death. Initiative was survival. Colonel Robert Sink, commander of the 506th PIR, recognized this immediately. In his after-action report, he singled out 1st Platoon, Easy Company, for gallantry in action under extremely hazardous conditions. Winters received no medal. For the night of October 5th, his Distinguished Service Cross had already been awarded for actions in Normandy, but his men knew. They had faced the abyss and held the line. The island remained in Allied hands until November 25, 1944, when the 101st was finally relieved after 72 days of continuous combat. Continuous combat. The cost was high. The 506th PIR suffered over 1,200 casualties in Holland, nearly half its strength. The island was no vacation destination. It was a muddy, shell-pocked purgatory where paratroopers fought not for glory, but for the next hour, the next dike, the next breath. And on the night of October 5, 1944, in the darkness near Randwick, Captain Richard Winters and 34 airborne soldiers ensured that purgatory did not become a tomb. The island was never meant to be held. It was a fragment of a failed plan, a sliver of Dutch farmland caught between rivers and empires, abandoned by strategy, but defended by men who refused to yield. In the mud and mist of October 1944, there were no grand offensives, no triumphant liberations, only foxholes, dikes, and the quiet resolve of paratroopers who understood that sometimes victory is not measured in miles advanced. Captain Winters and his men did not seek heroism that night. They sought survival, and in doing so, preserved the fragile integrity of an entire division. Their actions remind us that in war, as in history, the smallest decisions, made in darkness, under fire, with no guarantee of success, can alter the course of far larger events. The island stands today as it did then, quiet, windswept, ordinary. But for those who were there, and for those who remember, it remains a testament to a simple, enduring truth. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act when everything else says to retreat. And that choice, made again and again by the men of the 101st Airborne, is why the island, though small, though forgotten by many, was never lost.